federal election speculation this Wednesday night. The NDP scraps the deal, helping to keep Justin Trudeau's minority government in power.
The Liberals are too weak, too selfish.
What it all means and when a vote could happen. The Bank of Canada's key interest rate drops again. Are more cuts ahead? What experts are predicting. Washington accuses Moscow of meddling in the election. The action the U.S. is taking and Russia's response. Plus, outpouring of grief.
The memory that someone like that leaves, it's priceless.
The memorial honoring Johnny and Matthew Goodrow.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. There's a surprise shift in federal politics unfolding tonight, and the prospect of an early election is front and center. The NDP announced on social media it's pulling out of its supply and confidence deal with the Liberals, saying it's fed up with the government letting people down. The agreement has helped prop up the minority Liberals for more than 2 years. David Akin reports on the high stakes and whether the NDP move might send Canadians to the polls this fall.
Today, I notified the Prime Minister that I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement.
There was no press conference, just that NDP-produced video ending the 2.5-year-old deal that saw the NDP prop up the minority Liberals on confidence votes, and in exchange, the NDP got the Liberals to move on their priorities.
The workers, unite!
Anti-scab legislation, housing, national pharmacare, and a national dental care plan. The agreement included a clause saying either side could end it at any time. And that time has come for frustrated New Democrats, frustrated by the inability of the Liberals to stand up to Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives, and by the Liberal decision to order locked-out rail workers back to work.
Big corporations and wealthy CEOs have had their government. It's the people's time. The fact is, the Liberals are too weak, too selfish.
Vote to trigger a carbon tax election.
Poilievre said if that's how New Democrats feel, they should vote no confidence immediately and force a fall election. That's unlikely to happen, though. NDP sources say the breaking of this agreement does not mean an automatic election, but what it does mean is New Democrats will vote on government legislation on a case-by-case basis.
I really hope the NDP stays focused on how we can deliver for Canadians, as we have over the past years, rather than focusing on politics.
David, what kind of pressure does this put on the government and a possible election call?
Well, it certainly puts a different kind of pressure on the governing Liberals, but it's pressure that Justin Trudeau dealt with before during the 2019 to 2021 minority. Now, the first serious confidence test is likely to come in late fall, in the fall economic statement. Now, if there are new tax or new spending measures in that budget update, the Liberals will have to figure out how to secure support of the NDP or perhaps even the Bloc Québécois. We will get our first chance to ask Jagmeet Singh about it when he speaks to reporters in Toronto Thursday. Carolyn.
David Akin in Ottawa, thank you. There's some relief tonight for millions of Canadians strapped for cash with a high cost of living. The Bank of Canada slashed its key rate by 25 basis points to 4.25%. Mackenzie Gray reports on what today's rate drop means for mortgage holders and whether more cuts are on the way.
Good things seem to come in threes at the Bank of Canada.
Today, we lowered our policy interest rate by 25 basis points to 4.25%. This is the third consecutive decrease since June.
For the first time since 2009, the Great Recession, the Bank of Canada made 3 cuts in a row, and those are likely to keep coming if Governor Tiff Macklem's key metric keeps coming down.
If inflation continues to ease broadly in line with our July forecast, it is reasonable to expect further cuts.
Welcome news for Jim Meany.
I don't grow enough to really have much of an impact on my grocery bill.
But even then, every potato can help, not just with food prices, but also to offset higher mortgage costs.
I've got a fairly significant mortgage, and I'm hoping that there'll be significant savings, and I'm hoping that my payment will drop quite a bit.
Well, that's likely to happen for Meany, who's part of the 76% of mortgage holders up for renewal by the end of 2026. It could reignite a hot housing market.
We know there's a lot of pent-up demand. So ultimately, as rates come down, it will become that much more appealing to enter the Canadian housing market.
Rents likely to stay unappealing, the bank blaming housing supply shortages and a massive post-COVID immigration surge for expensive leases and increased unemployment.
The Canadian economy is at a point where it's having trouble absorbing the number of workers into the job rates.
Unemployment troubles and a potentially softening economy risk, Macklem says, could halt further cuts, a scenario that private sector economists view as unlikely.
We expect the bank will continue to lower the policy rate, but it will be at this deliberate pace of about 25 basis points going forward.
While the pace of inflation keeps coming down, Macklem says the bank is committed to making sure it doesn't drop below their 2% target, Carolyn, meaning the high prices folks have been dealing with are likely here to stay.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you. Police in Vancouver are investigating 2 unprovoked random attacks that happened downtown this morning. One man was killed, the other victim left with life-altering injuries. At about 7:40 a.m., police received reports of a man who had been attacked with a knife. They found the man in his 50s bleeding from his head with a severed hand. He's expected to survive. Less than 10 minutes later, a second man was fatally attacked a few blocks away. Police arrested a 34-year-old man from White Rock about an hour later.
This appears to be a very troubled man who has a lengthy history of mental health-related incidents. He has a prior conviction for assault causing bodily harm, and at the time of his arrest, he was on probation out of White Rock for an assault that occurred in 2023.
Police don't yet have a motive. In Georgia, at least 4 people are dead and 9 others wounded after a gunman opened fire at a high school this morning. It happened at Appalachia High School, an hour outside of Atlanta. Students and staff fled to the school's football field. 2 students and 2 teachers were killed. A 14-year-old boy who attends the high school is in police custody. Police say he will be charged with murder and tried as an adult. U.S. officials are accusing the Kremlin of launching a covert campaign to influence the upcoming U.S. election. But while the allegation is familiar, the tactics have evolved. Jeff Semple joins us with the details of the breaking allegations. Jeff.
Carolyn, this unsealed affidavit from the U.S. Justice Department describes a Russian operation called Doppelganger, designed to covertly spread Russian propaganda and disinformation and influence foreign elections, including the race for the White House.
Russia remains a predominant foreign threat to our elections.
U.S. justice and intelligence officials announcing a slew of charges and sanctions targeting 2 Russian entities and 10 individuals, including the editor and deputy editor of RT. Formerly known as Russia Today, the Kremlin's now notorious state TV network was already banned and sanctioned by the U.S., Canada, and other allies. Global News toured its Moscow studios in 2018.
We're showing a different picture of the world.
The broadcaster has long presented the pro-Russian version of events to international audiences. But since its ban, U.S. officials allege RT has adopted a new strategy, funneling nearly $10 million to a company in Tennessee.
The defendants directed the company to contract with U.S.-based social media influencers to share this content on their platforms.
That content on social media and fake U.S. news websites sought to undermine Western support for Ukraine and amplify divisions in Western countries.
Accusing the channel of interference in the
RT was quick to cover the allegations themselves with the headline Russiagate Returns. In a statement, an RT spokesperson quipped, 2016 called and it wants its cliches back. 3 things are certain in life: death, taxes, and RT's interference in the U.S. elections. Ha ha ha.
I'm sure that was much funnier in the original Russian, but for us, it's not funny. This is deadly serious.
There's nothing surprising what they're saying here.
This disinformation expert says these allegations are nothing new.
Today was about confirming, particularly to the domestic audience, that the American government, the American state, has this election under control.
U.S. officials also reported seeing increasingly aggressive interference campaigns from Iran and China. They're warning to Americans heading into an election, check your sources. Carolyn?
Jeff Semple in Toronto, thank you. We're learning new details about another alleged case of foreign interference in American politics, this one apparently benefiting China. Eric Sorensen reports on the charges against Linda's son and the kickbacks she's said to have received.
She was once the deputy chief of staff to the governor of New York. Now Linda's son has been arrested, accused of working as a foreign agent for China, charged with taking millions of dollars in payments and gifts to advance China's interests. Her husband is charged with money laundering. Governor Kathy Hochul's reaction?
Absolutely shocked. The second we discovered some levels of misconduct, we fired her. We alerted the authorities.
FBI agents raided son's multi-million-dollar home in July. Prosecutors believe kickbacks paid for a lavish lifestyle that included a Ferrari like this. The indictment alleges Son aligned New York State messaging with Chinese priorities, that she blocked Taiwanese officials from having access to the governor's office, and blocked references to Taiwan in government documents.
The way Americans think about national security is being corrupted by foreign adversaries who want to tell us how to think and how to act.
The New York case is another wake-up call for Canada, says Chuck Kwan, an advocate for Canadians alleging Chinese interference.
Obviously, China has gotten more sophisticated, from municipal government to school boards, all the way up to provincial and federal level. So, all this is not very surprising to us.
And not respecting countering foreign interference.
Last May, Ottawa tabled legislation to create a foreign agent registry, similar to what exists in the U.S., to combat illegal foreign influence in this country. But the registry hasn't been established yet.
I am kind of dismayed that this country is not reacting fast enough to the global threat posed by China.
Back in New York, Linda Son's lawyer called the U.S. investigation overly aggressive.
We are looking forward to exercising our right to a speedy trial and addressing these accusations.
Released on a $1.5 million bond, Son has been ordered not to have any contact with the Chinese consulate. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Russia launched fresh attacks throughout Ukraine today, killing at least 7 people. The drone and missile strikes destroyed several historic buildings in the heart of Lviv. More than 50 people were injured. Search and rescue teams scoured the debris for survivors. The bombardment near the border prompted Poland to put its air defenses on high alert. And one of Ukraine's most recognizable faces has resigned. Dmytro Kuleba gave no reason for stepping down as foreign minister. Today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky pushed ahead with a sweeping overhaul of senior government ranks. His party announced a slate of 9 candidates for cabinet posts, marking the biggest shakeup in the government since Russia's full-scale war began. A renewed plea for peace in Gaza. Coming up, why can't a temporary pause in fighting allowing for a vaccination campaign be made permanent? As fighting rages in Gaza, there has been some reprieve for civilians. Israel and Hamas are adhering to daily pauses in fighting to allow for a major vaccination drive to be conducted safely. The United Nations Relief Agency says it has vaccinated more than 180,000 children against polio in the first 3 days of its program. Redmond Shannon reports.
A drop of polio vaccine and a tap with a Sharpie, administered to 187,000 kids in 3 days across central Gaza before the effort moves to the south of the Strip. Last month saw Gaza's first case of polio in 25 years.
For a long time, I haven't seen so many children smiling, happy, and by the way, explaining to me and to us why they wanted to be vaccinated.
The plan made possible by a daily pause in hostilities observed by both Israel and Hamas. This mother asks, if the pauses are being observed to save children, why can't there be a permanent ceasefire to do the same? Across the border, families of Israeli hostages, dead and alive, plead with their government to strike a deal to bring them home. This woman calls Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Mr. Abandonment, blaming him for her cousin's death and the deaths of the 6 hostages whose bodies were recovered from Gaza over the weekend, a sentiment shared by Hamas.
Third, continue blaming Netanyahu.
Israel's under-pressure leader is arguing for eliminating Hamas and his relatively new objective of occupying Gaza's border with Egypt for the foreseeable future, a red line for Hamas.
Now the world will seriously demand that Israel make concessions after this massacre?
Netanyahu's presentation also included a map which showed the occupied Palestinian territory of the West Bank as a constituent part of Israel. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
A scathing report into the deadly Grenfell Tower fire in London says the disaster was the culmination of decades of failures by the government and the construction industry. 72 people were killed in 2017 when a fire started in a kitchen on the 4th floor and quickly raced up the building. The chair of the public inquiry into the tragedy says incompetence and, in some instances, dishonesty and greed turned the building into a death trap. The inquiry's final report says all fatalities were avoidable and blames the U.S.-based company that made and sold the building's highly flammable exterior cladding for deliberately concealing the true extent of the danger. Still ahead, the dramatic police takedown at a Toronto area Tim Hortons. In Ontario, Peel police have charged a 25-year-old man after he allegedly tried to drive over 2 police cruisers to avoid arrest. Check out the security video from last night. Police say they intercepted the suspect in a reportedly stolen vehicle at a Tim Hortons drive-thru. After boxing in the Bronco, the driver pulled forward and on top of one of the police cars. No one was injured, but as you can see, the cruiser was smashed. The suspect is facing several charges. A Quebec judge is ordering the City of Montreal to pay victims of racial profiling by police up to $5,000 each. The ruling is part of a class action lawsuit launched by a black man who was arrested in 2017. A study in 2019 found black and Indigenous people were 4 to 5 times more likely to be stopped by Montreal police than white people, while Arab civilians were twice as likely to be stopped. Mike Armstrong has the details.
In her ruling, the judge calls racial profiling a systemic problem plaguing the Montreal police force. The lawyer who brought the class action lawsuit says it was never about the money, but instead about the victims.
It's not normal in the society. It's not normal in Quebec and Canada.
For sure. After a 20-day court case last year, the judge ruled in favor of the lead plaintiff, Alexandre Lamontagne, a hospital security guard. He was stopped by police in 2017 crossing the street in Old Montreal. After Lamontagne asked for the officer's badge numbers, he was tossed to the ground, handcuffed, and told he'd be charged with assault. He was not. Instead, after reviewing video of the interaction, the judge is awarding Lamontagne $5,000, as well as to 2 other groups, people racially profiled over a 6-month period in 2018 and 2019. Others could be awarded $2,500 if they were stopped, but evidence wasn't kept. Montreal's mayor says the city's lawyers are studying the verdict.
We've always been really sensitive and proactive on that matter, and we will continue to do so.
Human rights groups tend to fight incidents of racial profiling case by case. This was a man who was wrongfully arrested last year. After he was handcuffed by police, the officers lost the keys. He's suing for $125,000. The amount is higher, but advocates say may not be as effective as broader suits.
It's a great outcome. Class action against racial profiling is certainly going to be the way of the future.
Now, how much the class action suit could cost the city is impossible to say, but the lawyer says victims can be found. Police have each incident in their system. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Next, Calgary prepares to honor the Gaudreau brothers after their tragic deaths. Nicholas Bennett won his 2nd gold medal at the Paralympic Games in Paris. The 20-year-old BC native won the men's 200-meter individual medley in world record time. BC's Greg Stewart defended his gold medal in men's shot put. BC's Nathan Clement snagged his first ever Paralympic medal, a silver, in the men's individual time trial. And Canada's youngest Paralympian landed on the podium today. 17-year-old Reid Maxwell from Alberta swam to silver in the men's 400-meter freestyle. Canada now has 17 Paralympic medals. Well, it's been nearly a week since the hockey world was shattered by news former Calgary Flames forward Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew were killed. The brothers were hit by an alleged drunk driver near their hometown in New Jersey. Tonight, Johnny's former team will honor the pair outside the Saddledome. Global's Craig Momney has more. Craig.
In just a few hours, fans will gather here outside the west entrance of the Saddledome to say goodbye to Johnny and his brother Matthew. Now, the event will start around 8 o'clock and will be held near the memorial that was started by fans on Friday after the news broke of their tragic deaths. The event is expected to be about 45 minutes long, with several guests speaking, as well as a 13-minute vigil for Johnny and Matthew. According to the Calgary Flames, tonight's event is day one of a 13-day observance for the brothers for fans to visit and say their goodbyes.
A lot of support have gone into this from all of Calgary, and he was such a hero to the city. I thought it would be nice to come see.
He was a great kind of contributor to the community. His wife and kids were always around. He contributed to a lot of good causes in the city too. So one can just kind of conclude that he was a great person.
It's always hard to think that, they're gone, but, the memory that someone like that leaves, it's priceless.
Now, Johnny's new team, the Columbus Blue Jackets, also held a candlelight vigil today outside Nationwide Arena in Columbus with a 13-minute and 21-second silent remembrance. Carolyn?
Craig Momney in Calgary, thank you. And that is Global National for this Wednesday night. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. Tonight's Your Canada is Mount Robson, near Valemount, British Columbia. We love seeing your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow night. Have a great night.